When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he stayed close to the sea. One of the synagogue officials named Jairus came forward. Seeing him, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Please, come lay your hands on her, that she may get well and live." He went off with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed upon him. There was a woman afflicted with hemorrhages for 12 years. She had suffered greatly at the hands of many doctors and had spent all that she had. Yet she was not helped, but only grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. She said, "If I but touch his clothes, I shall be cured." Immediately her flow of blood dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Jesus, aware at once that power had gone out from him, turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who has touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to Jesus, "You see how the crowd is pressing upon you, and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. The woman, realizing what had happened to her, approached in fear and trembling. She fell down before Jesus and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." While he was still speaking, people from the synagogue official's house arrived and said, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" Disregarding the message that was reported, Jesus said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid, just have faith." He did not allow anyone to accompany him inside except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they arrived at the house of the synagogue official, he caught sight of a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. So he went in and said to them, "Why this commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." And they ridiculed him. Then he put them all out. He took along the child's father and mother and those who were with him and entered the room where the child was. He took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The girl, a child of 12, arose immediately and walked around. At that, they were utterly astounded. He gave strict orders that no one should know this, and said that she should be given something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So St. Mark is known for his sandwiches, not Reuben on rye, but rather that he places two stories or two parts of a story around a middle story. This happens in the other Gospels as well. In fact, Matthew and Luke, the other synoptic Gospels that look similar, these other Gospels also have this story. Luke's is about as long as Mark's, but considering that Mark's is the shortest Gospel, Mark spends quite a bit of time here. And part of this is to identify something, some important aspects of Jesus and his ministry. Matthew's version of this, and Matthew's gospel is longer, Matthew's version of this is really very short. And so it's just interesting to compare these things. We're in Mark's gospel, chapter 5, verses 21 to 43 in the longer version, which I read for you. And given that that the three parts all go together, it's kind of a good thing to read all three of these together, because they're about what Jesus is doing. Jesus in this chapter, you remember when last we left him, he went across the sea. And as he was crossing the sea, he shows his mastery of nature and of the demonic in nature as he calms the storm. When he gets to the other side, a story we skipped is that he runs into a demoniac and he casts the demons out of him into a herd of pigs, right? And so we skip where he has mastery over the demons in a very literal, you know that he's talking to demons. You know that he's expanding the kingdom of God, and he's casting out the power of the devil. And then he comes back across, and when he makes his way back across, he comes to a place where he's been to the synagogue, a place where it's his home area, right? So this would be Capernaum with his mother-in-law and all of that sort of thing. And he gets to this place, and he's going to show his mastery over disease and death in this story. Disease and death. Again, the demonic powers that wish to destroy, the result of evil. So he comes into town in the boat. He gets out of the boat, and a large crowd gathers around him, and they're pressing in on him. And some people come to the fore. The first one to make it all the way to the front is the synagogue official, and he prostrates himself. He falls to his feet and pleads with him. It's the sort of thing that you would do before a superior. And remember, Jairus in this case would not be somebody who should look around and say, oh, this is my superior. He's an important figure in this synagogue where Jesus has already caused some trouble. But his daughter is dying, and there are some things that are more important than status or pride or even sort of hierarchical ranking in this sense and at this time. So he falls at his feet, and in the midst of his talking, something else happens. So he falls at his feet. We don't know what Jesus is going to do. Even he went off. Actually, no. We do know what Jesus is going to do. We know that Jesus is going to go with him, but the crowd continues to press around him. So he's being jostled. He's being moved about. He's being touched. He's in contact with people all around him. Right? There are people, and you can be sure that if Jairus just got him to go with him, there are about 5 of them who are saying, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. You know, they're asking for him. It's like a press conference almost, right? They just keep trying to get his attention and trying to get him. And this woman with a hemorrhage, she doesn't even try to get his attention. In fact, she tries to avoid his attention, but to get his power. She tries to get healing from him without drawing his attention to her or drawing anyone else's attention. And the reason that she might do this, one of the reasons that she might really do this, is that she's been afflicted with bleeding, a hemorrhage, right? Bleeding for all these years. Well, blood loss makes one unclean. Because blood is life. Her life is draining from her, right? And it's also the blood life that is part of her power of fertility, right? The gift of God of her fertility is part of what's going on here. And so what would make her unclean during menstruation would also make her unclean, make other things and other people unclean when blood that's involved. And so ritual impurity is happening. And just like the leper, who is supposed to not touch anybody, the leper isn't just not supposed to touch anybody. The leper is supposed to make sure that nobody touches him by shouting, "Unclean, unclean." Now we don't get that with her, but at the same time, if she touches somebody unaware and they go unclean before the Lord, what could ritual impurity is very important to the people of Israel. And it's important to the boundaries that God has set up for them to live within. But she touches him anyway. And you notice Jesus doesn't say anything about her being unclean, nor does he say, "Now you've made me unclean." Which in fact she can't do, right? She is touching the source of life itself. or some of his clothes. That's the other thing that I find really interesting about this story, that she touches his clothes, that she touches something that belongs to him. We in the Catholic Church, we have things called relics. And there, around the world, there are things where we say, that's a relic of something. But the original sense of this, or the sense of it that's the most powerful, is the sense that we have. That a relic is something that either is a part of or belonged to someone who was holy, or touched something that was holy. And so you see, holiness can be passed along. And she recognizes that, and she touches him. Now, Jesus realizes that power has gone forth from him. It doesn't say, and Jesus realized that he healed her. It says he realizes that power has gone forth from him. So there's this connection with something greater than even himself, right? He's God, but he's not the Father or the Holy Spirit. And over, when he performs a miracle, he will oftentimes refer it to the Father. And what's more, his clothing is referred to him. See, this is the connection. And Jairus and the other folks, when they ask him to come to heal the 12-year-old girl, they want him to touch her. Later on, we're going to see somebody who says, oh, you don't even have to come. You just say the word and it'll happen. It's somebody from a different culture. But in the Jewish culture, in the culture of God's people, touch is important. This is why I refer to the whole jostling thing, right? They're jostling him. And in one of the Gospels, it says that Peter says to him, how do you imagine that you're going to find out who this was? Everybody's touching you. But in this case, it's his apostles, because in Mark's gospel, the apostles, they're important. They're very connected to Jesus, and they understand, and they don't understand, right? And this is a time when they don't get it. And what is it that they don't get? Well, it's not that Jesus is mad. He doesn't look around and say, "Who touched me? Who stole my power?" Right? Because again, you get the sense that it's not just his, right? Divine power is it's omnipotent, right? That means it's enough. There's no division of God's power. It's not as if he's a battery and he's going to run out, right? He's the source of energy. He's the source of life. He's the creator. But the Father is the creator, and so somehow the power is also flowing through him. But the important thing is not that he find out who stole his power so that he can properly shake his finger at her. The point of this is that he needs to let her know that her healing is not just a physical action, right? It's not just her body that's been healed. It's not just her blood that has been healed. She has been healed so that she might live. She has been healed because she has had an encounter with Jesus. And the question of the whole gospel is, well, who is this Jesus? And the answer is given at the beginning, and the answer is given at the end, but the answer is also given over and over and over again. Who is Jesus? Jesus is the one whose power goes out because of her faith. Lots of other people were touching him, but only one person touched him with faith. Lots of other people were jostling him. And one of the commentaries is a kind of a spiritual commentary that I read, and one of the commentaries asks this question. It says, how many times have we touched Jesus and nothing's happened? Because we have not touched him with faith. Because we've only jostled him. We've only happened to be in the same room with him. We've only connected like two football players, right? And not like somebody who is in deep need of not just human contact, but divine contact. She touches even a piece of his clothing, and she touches him more deeply, so deeply that he can feel. And not only can he feel, of course, she feels. And here's the other thing that's part of this. When does she feel this? Well, by and by? No. We're in Mark's gospel. She feels immediately. That's the word that he keeps using, and he's going to use it again with the daughter, with Jairus' daughter. So, if Jesus hadn't been distracted by looking for this woman, he might have made it to Jairus' house in time. He's a synagogue official. He probably lives pretty close to the synagogue, which is just up the street, right? And so they're just walking right over there, and there's a chance that he could have made it in time, but he got distracted by this woman. Oh, who he also calls daughter, by the way. So he says, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." Your faith, right? She comes to him with faith. And faith is, in Mark's gospel, one commentator says that faith in Mark's gospel is a sort of a faith against the odds, right? If I can just touch. Well, how's she going to do that? She's got to get through that crowd. And she's weak. And she's poor, right? She spent all her money on doctors. So now the people come from the synagogue official's house and they say, "Oh, don't trouble the master at all. Don't trouble him anymore. It's over. It's all done." But Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus doesn't say, "Oh yeah, you're right, it's over. Turn around and go back to the seashore where he can heal some other people." No, Jesus comes right along. He keeps on his way. And he goes to the house. And it'll tell us that the daughter is 12 years old. It'll tell us also that the woman has had this hemorrhage for 12 years. So as long as this woman has been losing her life, this little girl has been alive. And alive like a little child would be alive, right? She's a little child. You know there's life when you see a 12-year-old who's in their they're excited about something or what have you, right? The woman reaches out and touches Jesus. Jesus gets into the child's womb and he reaches out and he takes her hand. So there's a difference between these two, right? The woman with the hemorrhage has been losing life. The child has lost life. Jesus asks the people, "Why are you carrying on?" That's what they did when somebody died, right? That was part of the ritual. It wasn't just a matter of life and death. It wasn't just a matter of, oh well, somebody died. It was a matter of, this is what you do when somebody dies. You pull out the cymbals and you pull out the banging things, and you rip your clothes and you shout, "Rah!" or you whine, "Wee!" I'm making all that up. I'm not saying necessarily exactly how they did it. You can see different movies how they show it. You could go back and research it, but in the end, it was something that they did that was, everybody knew how to mourn. This is also an important thing for us that we could learn from this, from what we see in the Gospels, that everybody knew how to mourn. Nowadays, we want to take death and sweep it under a rug. And this is also not very Christian. I was at a funeral on Monday, and Father Jared Johnson was there, and he did a really nice job of pointing out that the way that Christians talk about death is different than the way that the pagans talked about death. The Romans didn't say that there were cemeteries. The Romans said that there were cities of the dead. The Romans didn't say that somebody has gone to their rest, or that somebody was resting, or sleeping like Jesus does. And everybody in the Jewish culture also understood this and talked this way. They talked about that she's gone to sleep. And Jesus isn't denying that she dies by this. Oh no, she's not dead. She's just sleeping. But rather, he's speaking of a sleep, which is death, that is not the end. As Christians, as followers of the risen one, we don't believe that death is the end. Death is significant. Death is sleep. But what happens to one who is asleep? They wake up. They wake up either to the dawn of a new day of life, or they wake up to eternal death, right? To hell. So we're getting some things about the last things here. Another thing that Mark does that's beautiful is that he gives us Jesus' own words. When he talks to the little girl, Talitha koum, that's Aramaic. And Mark, of course, tells us what it means. Little girl, I say to you, arise. And the word arise is the word that's used for resurrection. It also means get up from your sleep, but it also means resurrection. And in this case, she is not merely sleeping. She has died and has been brought back to life by Jesus. Now let's see if there's something else I can say. And again, it says that she immediately gets up, right? There's the other immediate. Arise, the same as the resurrection. Yeah, no, I think I've said everything I wanted to say here today. This is a beautiful story, because the sandwich helps us to see this, that the little girl who is risen from death, when Jairus comes to Jesus, Jairus says, "Come and heal my little girl so that she may be healed." And the word for healed is salved, saved. Come that she may be, it's the same word. It means to be healed and to be saved so that she can live. Okay? Now, what happens to the woman with the hemorrhage? She is healed so that the life is no longer just draining from her, but so that she can live. Do you see that this is a story not only of the resurrection and the life after death that Jesus promises us, but also of our healing so that we can live? And that's why the sandwich can be so effective, because it brings us to understand that this isn't just a story for maybe someone who happens to die, but it is a story for us. Like the story of Jesus in the boat that we heard this last weekend, where Jesus compares fear and faith. Now we have fear again, and the fear that the people have, but the power of faith, not just to calm the storm, but to heal and to raise from